Hi, welcome back to the Fourfold Path. I'm Jordan. I think it's time for a little bit of a tiny retro and update to our process. So, we're in we just ended the second play episode of the second story arc. So, we played our opening sequence, we learned a little bit about Tabitha, who she is, who's in her life, and we've had our first major, big, spoily piece of conflict in the game. Two, really. Um, so if you haven't watched yet, I'll let you get to it. It'll be interesting for you. It'll be exciting. But for me, I want to talk a little bit about what's working, what's not, and what I'm going to change going forward. First of all, I don't have them out. I've been playing around. I've been really enjoying rolling dice, flipping coins, and in the most recent play episode, I had tarot cards out. And there's something about touching those assets that makes it feel like a game. And so I'm real loath to start to do things like move tables and dice rolls into my system automation because then I won't get to throw the dice and touch books. And that is, for me personally, a big part of what gives the game its game feel. So I have to be mindful of that when I start to build the systems. I recently switched from doing I muddled through the radio drama the first time. I said I was going to switch to doing sort of a serialization of the play sessions. I've been writing those. There was a big bolus of them that I needed to write up front. I didn't enjoy writing like 4 or 5 of them back to back to back to back to back. But the process of writing a light novelization of my play sessions has been very enjoyable for me. I like writing, and the parts of it that I'm experiencing as friction we'll talk about in a little bit. So there are places where my tooling wasn't helping me with writing. That's what wasn't working, but the writing itself was super fun. And finally, there was a really big turn in terms of the nature of the relationship between Tabitha and Jennifer, where I hadn't specified exactly a certain aspect of how they got together and what their relationship was. And it was useful not even in the fiction of the game. It was useful in the fiction of the writing to be like, oh, this specifically is the nature of how they met and how they got together. And that's going to be really useful. Similarly, there was another sort of vague relationship thing going on with Charles Irwin and whether or not he was part of a larger group. And those got resolved in play sessions further on. And so not making those decisions up front and letting the die rolls and the mythic questions sort of provide necessary context and fill those in has been working well. So I'm going to continue to be as non-committal as I can be about the nature of characters and relationships. Just enough detail to use in the scene, no more so that they can be leaned into later on. In terms of things that aren't working, so the structure of my repository has been not great. There are 4 places, roughly, where it makes sense to write like scene number 1 and the title. And it's the outline for the writing prompt, for the novelization portion, the novelization itself, so the prose version of the session, the session notes that are useful for running the mythic campaign and deciding what's happened scene to scene to scene, and the facts that are extracted via Whisper and an LLM from the transcript of me playing the scene live. So all 4 of those things reasonably could have the same title, and they could go in the same place. All of those could reasonably have the same title. This isn't really an issue from a file system perspective. You use folders like God intended. And it's not a Git issue because Git deals with that. But Obsidian, for the convenience of the user, allows you to specify a partial path to a particular file in the vault. And effectively, you can specify the terminal element only. So I could be tempted, for example, to refer to something as 001, it begins. If that exists in 3 directories, that causes a problem and makes Obsidian think it should update links and things like that. I don't want misdirected links. I want to be able to click around in the graph and see how things relate. So I've had to adopt a naming convention that unifies the 4 different types of elements. It's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. In my writing for novelization, I have not been backlinking to things like characters and item descriptions and room descriptions when they come up in the text. That can be annoying. It'll be an issue going forward when I want to revise those chapters and I need to remind myself, hey, what does this room look like? Because it won't be fresh in my mind from playing. That I have found some tooling in Obsidian to deal with to strip out links for when I go to publish them online. And I think for right now, I'm just going to write them as if I'm not going to publish a serialization. And maybe I'll just write it for myself for practice. The biggest complaints are the bookending items here, and they relate to one another. So ChatGPT as a service lacks the amount of control over context that I'd like to have in the tools that I'm using. And the way that has been manifesting is in the outlines. They haven't been coming out in a way that's sort of suitable for the amount of writing that I want to do. So there have been a couple of problems there. We've been missing key story beats, things that are big emotional elements of the scene for the characters, or that introduce critical facts that I want to lean against in my threads or in my writing or in the characters that exist in the world or something like that. So it's overlooking stuff in its digest. And it's inventing things too because it thinks that they're going to be narratively interesting or relevant, or alternatively, because it has additional context from previously played scenes and other files in the system like descriptions of characters. So there are 2 things that I can do. One is I've refined my prompts heavily to go through sort of a pipeline process and focus on different aspects at each stage of the pipeline. And that has improved the outline output to the point where I'm not angry about it all the time. And 2, because a lot of what I'm pushing against here is ChatGPT as a service via the web, I'm using a project on OpenAI's platform, and a project lets me upload files and blah, 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 blah. A lot of the issues are things like context and what it's remembered about me as an individual user. I can throw away all of those things if only I were to use ChatGPT as an API endpoint. I could set temperature, I could submit system prompts, all of the other things. But I would need tooling. And so we're getting real close to the point of, yeah, it's probably time to add the tooling, because I am definitely copying files back and forth and making weird, bendy decisions around what counts as context for this scene, where if I just had tooling that worked with the underlying Obsidian Vault, I would be able to build sort of a bolus of a prompt and a context that I could submit to the system and get a response back. So I think the day of automating that small portion of the system for the pipeline of transcript summaries, fact extraction from transcripts, scene summarization as a mythic artifact, scene summarization for the purpose of producing a written outline are going to be automated steps. Similarly, the prompt that I've been using to sort of seed my thinking about next scenes often is clear from the context. Like we just finished up play session 6, which was the hotel attack. So it's very clear that the next session is the kidnappers trying to evade the police. There's going to be a chase scene, obviously. So that's clear to me too. But when it's not obvious, it's nice to have, hey, here's sort of what's in my context. Here's what's going on in the characters' lives. And here are the threads that are still open. What are some interesting next scenes? So I'm looking at building just some light tooling around those 3 things. None of those will be a sort of classic RAG app. We're going to pull in whole documents rather than slice and dice them. We're not going to be using vector search to find specific elements. I'm going to have named files in mind, and I'm going to be looking at the links that exist inside of an Obsidian file in my vault to try and chase down and here's the other file you need to add in as context, and here's how it fits into the file. You may notice that there's a lot left in sort of this script for this episode. I just took a look at it to make sure that I've covered the pieces that I wanted to. I have. Remember when I started up the series, I said, we're not going to build tooling until it's necessary. We're not going to build tooling until there's friction. Well, I finally hit the point where there's sufficient friction in what I am doing that I'd like some additional tooling to help me out. So I don't know if it's going to be the next episode or the next week or when exactly, because things are kind of hectic with my actual working life right now. But soon I will be building some tooling to assist with this, and I'll show off both the design of it and the final implementations when we get around to it. In the interim, though, there'll be more play sessions, and we may revisit the question of how I'm going to surface the novelization of the game to the channel, either via a separate Scribble Hub or an oral reading of the story that I tell, or what exactly. I don't know yet, but we'll find out together. I'll see y'all then.